I didn't ask for the expectations that came with my name. They arrived quietly, without permission, without a warning, and long before I fully understood what they meant. At first, it felt flattering. People believed in me, people cared, people watched. But belief has weight, and attention changes shape once it grows too big. Somewhere along the way, the game stopped being just a game. Every performance became a statement. Every mistake became a question. Every moment on the court started carrying meaning beyond basketball. And the hardest part wasn't the pressure itself. It was realizing that none of it was something I had chosen. I didn't wake up one day and decide to represent a league, a generation, or an idea. I just wanted to play. But suddenly, playing wasn't enough anymore. Expectations followed me into every arena, every headline, every quiet moment in between. And the truth is, when expectations are placed on you without your consent, they don't feel like motivation. They feel like something you have to carry, even when you don't know how heavy they're going to become. Before expectations ever had a voice, the game felt lighter. I played because it made sense to me, because it was where my mind felt clear and my body felt honest. There wasn't a story attached to every shot, or a meaning assigned to every result. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone watching. I was just trying to get better. I could miss a shot and move on. I could have a bad night and learn from it without feeling like it defined me. The joy came from the work, the rhythm, the competition itself. That freedom mattered more than I realized at the time, because once expectations entered the picture, that simplicity disappeared. Suddenly, effort wasn't just effort, it was evidence. Confidence wasn't just confidence, it was something people expected to see every night. And the version of me that played freely, without labels or responsibility, beyond the game, slowly started to feel farther away. Looking back, that version wasn't naive. She was grounded, and understanding what I lost when expectations arrived helped me understand why the weight felt so unfamiliar when it first showed up. The change didn't happen all at once. It crept in slowly, almost invisibly. One headline here, one comparison there, one moment where the reaction felt bigger than the play itself. I started noticing that people weren't just watching the game anymore. They were watching me. Not to enjoy it, but to measure it. To project expectations onto every possession. Wins felt like confirmation. Losses felt like disappointment that needed an explanation. And suddenly, I wasn't just competing against the other team. I was competing against narratives that never agreed to be part of the space to simply exist as a player began to shrink. Every game felt like it carried consequences beyond the scoreboard. And that's when I understood something important. Expectations don't always come from belief in you as a person. Sometimes they come from what people want you to represent. And once that happens, the pressure stops being about performance and starts being about perception. What people don't realize is how expectations quietly change your relationship with confidence. Confidence used to feel natural, something that came from preparation and trust in the work. But once expectations take over, confidence starts feeling conditional. It feels like something you have to prove again every night instead of something you're allowed to carry with you. One good game isn't enough. One bad game suddenly feels symbolic. You start sensing that people aren't just reacting to what happened, they're reacting to what they hoped would happen. And that awareness follows you everywhere. It shows up in how you think, how you prepare, how much room you allow yourself to breathe. You start feeling responsible not just for your performance, but for how others feel about it. And that responsibility can quietly drain the joy out of the game if you don't recognize it early, because playing under expectation is very different from playing with belief. One lifts you, the other weighs you down. The hardest part was realizing that expectations don't rest when the game ends. They follow you home. They sit with you in quiet moments. They turn rest into guilt and reflection into overthinking. You start feeling like you're never fully off the clock, because even when you're not playing, people are still deciding what you mean to them. So gratitude and exhaustion begin to exist in the same space. You feel thankful for the opportunity, but tired of carrying the responsibility that came with it. And admitting that feels complicated, because how do you explain being overwhelmed by something you worked your entire life to earn? How do you say that the dream came with a cost you didn't see coming? So instead, you learn to manage it internally. You tell yourself to be tougher, quieter, stronger. You normalize the weight, but just because something becomes normal doesn't mean it becomes light. It just means you've learned how to carry it without letting it show. Over time, I realized that if I didn't change my relationship with expectations, they were going to change me. I couldn't control what people projected onto me, but I could control how much space I let those projections take up in my mind. That was a difficult adjustment because for a long time I thought meeting expectations was the same thing as respecting the opportunity. But they're not the same. Respecting the opportunity means showing up prepared, committed, and honest with yourself. Meeting expectations means trying to satisfy something that's constantly shifting and often outside your control. Once I understood that difference, something eased. I stopped trying to be everything people wanted me to be and focused on being consistent in the things I could actually manage: my work, my mindset, my effort, and the game started to feel more grounded again. Not because the expectations disappeared, but because they no longer defined my sense of worth. I wasn't carrying them alone anymore. I was choosing how much of that weight belonged to me. Looking back now, I understand that expectations aren't something you defeat. They're something you learn to live beside. They don't appear just because you grow stronger. They stay shifting, shape, changing volume, waiting to see how you respond. What changed for me wasn't the attention or the pressure. What changed was my understanding of who I am underneath it all. I stopped letting expectations decide whether a day was good or bad, whether a performance meant something about my future, or whether a moment defined my value. I learned that you can carry expectations without letting them carry you. And that lesson didn't just make me a better player, it made me more stable, more honest, more at peace with the journey I'm on. If you're watching this and you feel like you're carrying expectations you never asked for from your work, your family, your past success, know this. You're allowed to grow without becoming a symbol. You're allowed to exist without constantly proving something. And if stories like this help you feel a little less alone in that process, stay here. Subscribe. This channel is about understanding the weight behind the moments everyone else only sees on the surface.